The first game of the season is finally here, and I think one of the things I'm looking forward to the most is actually seeing the starting 11, because every time a coach names his first team of the season, you learn something about what he's thinking. You start getting an idea of who he trusts, who the new signings are that he thinks are ready straight away, and maybe who still has a little bit of work to do before they become regular starters. So in this video, I want to predict the 11 that I think Abdeslam Ouaddou is going to go with against Milford this Saturday. But I also want to explain why I'm picking those players, because for me, that's the interesting part. Anybody can put 11 names on the screen. The interesting conversation is why those 11. One thing I do want to say before we get into it is that I think these opening games are really important if Orlando Pirates are serious about winning the league. I've always had this view that you want to collect as many points as possible before the season starts getting complicated. Right now, everybody's fresh. The Champions League hasn't started yet. You're not traveling all over Africa every other week, and you're not dealing with 3 or 4 injuries to key players. This is probably the period where it's easiest to put your strongest team out every weekend. Because once the Champions League starts, everything changes. The fixtures pile up, players get injured, you have to rotate, and naturally, you're going to drop points here and there. And that's just football. We've all seen it. So if Pirates can come out of those opening games with maximum points, or as close to maximum as possible, you've already given yourself a really good foundation. You're the team everybody else is chasing instead of spending the first half of the season trying to catch up. The other thing I'm quite interested to see is what Ouaddou does with some of the players who are at the FIFA World Cup. Someone like Ozone has played a lot of football recently. Does the coach just throw him straight back in because he's one of the best players? Or does he think, you know what, let's manage him properly because we're going to need him for a very, very long season? That's something I'll definitely be watching as well. Anyway, let's get into my team. So for me, Fumane starts in goal. Now, I know he was at the FIFA World Cup, but I don't think the same conversation applies to goalkeepers because they're not covering the same physical distances as outfield players. More than anything, I actually think Shane comes into the season very, very hungry. Now, you remember he won goalkeeper of the season a few days ago, but he still wasn't Bafana's number 1 at the World Cup and hasn't been ever. So if I'm Fumane, I'm looking at this season and I'm thinking, I've got another opportunity here to make that position my own. Ronnie Williams is not getting any younger. And if Shane can put together an outstanding season again, maybe he starts giving the current national team coach or the next one a real headache. Then we get to left back, and this is where I think I might surprise a few people because I'd actually start Neo Rapo. Not because I think Hotto has done anything wrong, quite the opposite actually. At 35, Hotto still looks like he could play every single week, maybe every day, and Ndaba's also a very capable left back as well. But I just think this is the perfect opportunity to create competition. Rapo has come to Orlando Pirates with a lot of expectation. We all know he's got potential, and eventually the club is hoping he'll become an important player. So why not trust him in the opening game at home against Milford? For me, it's also about the message it sends. If Rapo starts, he knows he has to perform because Hotto and Ndaba are right there behind him. At the same time, Hotto and Ndaba know that nobody's place is guaranteed. I actually think that's healthy competition for the squad. That's kind of how you get performances. And then at centre-back, I don't think there's too much to debate or talk about. I'd go with Nkosinathi Sibisi and Lebone Siema. For me, this is one of those positions where you just start with what you know. Sibisi is your captain. Siema is coming off of a defender of the season or campaign. And together they've built a really good understanding. Yes, there are other centre-backs that we've signed in the squad that are good, and that competition is important over the course of the season. But for the opening game, I'd keep this one simple. I think Ouaddou probably will as well. because centre-backs is just one of those positions. Then at right back, I'd go with Kamogelo Sibili. I just think this is the kind of game where Pirates are going to have a lot of the ball, and Sibili gives you that attacking width from deep. Against a Milford side that's likely to spend long periods of the game defending, I think his willingness to get forward could be really useful. Then we get into midfield, and this is where I think there are probably the biggest selection headaches for Ouaddou. Because if you look at Orlando Pirates squad right now, I actually think central midfield is the strongest position in the team. You've got quality, you've got experience, you've got young players pushing, and you've got players with completely different profiles as well. Now, I know there'll be people saying, start Cameron Danson. I know there'll be people saying, give Mulai a chance. Others, Nemtajera. And honestly, I understand those arguments because I think those three have got massive futures ahead of them and massive quality. But for the first game of the season, I think I'd just be a little bit more assured in midfield. I'd go with Talent Mbata and Sihle Nduli. I actually think that's the midfield pairing we're going to see for the most of this upcoming season. Mbata has become one of the most important players at Pirates. And then alongside him, Nduli gives you that experience and that responsibility. He's not necessarily going to play the spectacular pass every 5 minutes. But I think for an opening game, that's okay. Sometimes what you need is rather control before anything flashy. Now, having said that, if after 60 minutes Pirates are dominating the ball but struggling to break Milford down, that's maybe where I start looking at somebody like Masindi or Danson or Mulai. They give you something different, more adventurous in possession, prepared to receive the ball in tight spaces. Masindi likes to break forward with a run, and they see things that nobody else sees. So I wouldn't necessarily start either of them, but I'd definitely be looking to bring them on if Pirates, for example, need creativity or a goal. Then just ahead of the sixes, I think this is Patrick Maswanganyi's position to lose. With Mufokeng's position being vacant this season, I think everybody expects Maswanganyi to become Orlando Pirates' main attacking midfielder again. And I actually think he'll be hungry for it. People have questioned him over the last 2 or so seasons. Some people feel like after the incredible start he had at Orlando Pirates, his performances have dropped ever so slightly or maybe a lot. Whether that's fair or not is another discussion for another day. But one thing's for sure, he now has an opportunity to remind everybody why some were comparing him to the Prince, Jomo Sono, when he first arrived at the club. He's got a chance to become the creative heartbeat of this team again. And I think he'll want that responsibility. And maybe not just for Pirates, but probably for Bafana as well. You know, Themba Zwane isn't going to play forever. He's not getting any younger. And Maswanganyi is getting to that age himself where he'll be thinking, this is probably my time. And then out wide, I think Ozone Apollo starts on the right wing and Sepang Moremi starts on the left. I know I mentioned earlier that I'd be interested to see whether Ouaddou rests some of the players that were at the World Cup, and maybe Apollos is one of those. But the more I think about it, the more I just think you start your best players. I think Ozone Apollos is Orlando Pirates' best footballer right now, certainly the most important in attack. He's someone who can create, he can score, and he just gives you that feeling that he might just win the game with a moment. So I think Ouaddou will play him. Then on the other side, I'd obviously go with Moremi, who was at the World Cup as well. I actually like him playing on the left. Being left-footed, he naturally wants to stay wide when he's on the left a little bit more, instead of always drifting inside into that number 10. And I think that works quite nicely if Neo Rapo looks like somebody who's comfortable in the half spaces and can do an underlapping run into midfield rather than always overlapping on the outside. So I think those two could actually complement each other quite well. Then we go to striker. This one is probably where my own biases is going to come in. I think Ouaddou might start Mbutuma, but if it was me, I'd actually go with Boitumelo Radiopane. And the reason is quite simple. I thought Radio Pane had a good preseason. He looks hungry. And now that Orlando Pirates have signed Erling Haaland, Sebastian Pedersen, there's even more reason for him, Radio Pane, to prove himself. And with Radio Pane, I still feel like we're waiting for that breakthrough. We're waiting for him to become the player we all thought he would become when he was scoring goals in the DDC. Maybe this is the season, and I know we keep saying that with him. And if it isn't, Ouaddou has options. Competition in this Pirates side is everywhere. Nobody's place feels guaranteed anymore, or will be offered on the silver platter because of your name. And then before I finish, I just want to say one thing, and I keep looking there because I think someone's knocking, so forgive me for that. I want to say, let's fill Orlando Stadium, Buccaneers. I'll be there myself, and I honestly can't wait. One thing that's become really special over the last couple of seasons is the atmosphere at our stadium that we, the fans, have created. I don't know whether the players inspire the crowd or the crowd inspire the players anymore. It almost feels like both happen at the same time. By the time the players walk out, the stadium is already bouncing. Opposition teams don't just have to play the players anymore, they also have to play the fans behind them. They have to deal with the 40,000 just screaming the whole game. That's become one of the club's biggest strengths, and I hope we see it again on Saturday. I certainly think we will. I know people aren't happy about the tickets price increase from 70 rands to 100, and I completely understand why people are asking questions. Football should always be accessible to the supporters because at the end of the day, they're the heartbeat of the club. At the same time, I also understand that clubs need to generate revenue if they're going to compete at the highest level. So I'm not really taking sides on that debate. I just like somebody from the club to explain the thinking behind the increase because I think supporters deserve that. I also noticed that tickets are digital only, so there's a lot of explaining. I'm actually quite happy about it. If that's part of trying to deal with like the counterfeit ticket situation and improve safety around matches, then I think that's a positive step. Hopefully the place is sold out. Hopefully the atmosphere is unbelievable. And hopefully by about 5 p.m. on Saturday afternoon, Orlando Pirates have started the season exactly the way title challengers or defenders should, with 3 points in the bag. Let me leave it there. Goodbye.